Welcome to the CHYE in partnership with COL Live K Factor podcast with your host, Rabbi Yehoshua Wordy, director of CHYE. Each week we bring you interviews with amazing Jewish entrepreneurs sharing their challenges and successes. Their stories will inspire you to make the Keli to take your business aspirations to the next level. Everybody, welcome back to the K Factor podcast brought to you by CHYE and COL Live. This week we're excited to have one of Crown Heights' well-known entrepreneurs, Reb Mendel Meyers, whose photography work as the Tiferes. He has built a photography business that's well-known in Crown Heights and in Borough Park and in Williamsburg, and he's really built up a tremendous practice, and we're excited to have him here tonight to share his story. Welcome, Reb Mendel.
Thank you, Yeshua. Thank you.
So, in our classic K-Factor style, please take us back to the May Bereshis. Tell us how you got into photography. At what point, as you came out of yeshiva, did you get into the business? How did it all begin?
Okay, so it began. Let me give you a little introduction where I grew up, and that has a lot to do with the type of growing up, the type of chinuch I believe I had, what had a lot of influence on my career today from a few aspects. I grew up, Baruch Hashem, in Amsterdam, Holland. My father was the first Lubavitcher in Holland. It was very close to the Rebbe. The Rebbe was a Makar. I gave him a lot of kiruvim. And my father had very strong emunah pshuta in the Eberstein, in the Rebbe, and whatever the Rebbe said is the way it was. It was very, very simple. And we always grew up knowing that we have to go. His biggest dream was his children would go to the yeshivas and turn out to be El Chayidin. And not to worry about parnasa. That was always a very big stress in the house. My father even once wrote an article for one of the magazines titled "Why I Didn't Send My Children to College." Being a professor in social anthropology, it was a little bit of a chidush. Being in a Christian university, writing such a thing. My mother, Sein Gesundheit Stark, is an artist. She's a painter, and her entire extended family are graphic designers, painters, photographers, very, very high-end commercial photographers. Anyway, so I grew up in that environment. Besides growing up in a place like growing up in the suburbs of Amsterdam, I grew up in a painting, basically. I didn't realize of painting till I came to Brooklyn, but that was really a beautiful, beautiful place, beautiful farms, and just everything with beautiful colors. And in general, a lot of the very famous painters came from Holland, because Holland has a lot of very interesting color. And the skies, a lot of the skies, beautiful colors, very unique, a lot of textures, a lot of different, very, very interesting. So I grew up in an environment where your eyes always worked. Your eyes were always, things captured. It's funny. My mother said when I was a kid, I used to grab an orange on the table and it just analyzed the orange. And I was a little kid and said, "Wow, this is so beautiful." I find myself still doing it without saying how beautiful it is, but it's just analyzing fruits and different things, using your eyes. So as I went to yeshiva and everything, I couldn't necessarily afford a camera, but I always had this. I used to look at things and say to myself, how beautiful would it be if I'll be able to frame this? Just a beautiful scenery anywhere I was. And Baruch Hashem, after being in yeshiva and being in Morristown, before that being in Israel yeshiva, I went on shlichus to Miami. That's where we met the first time.
Yes, indeed.
You were back in yeshiva or in cheder in school?
No, I was in elementary
school. Yeah. And we met there, and basically I was a dorm counselor. I was able to afford buying myself a DSLR, and sometimes making some time going around and taking some photographs around Miami, especially at night, the boats, the bay. It was beautiful. After that, coming to 770, a friend of mine who was dorming in the same dorm with me, his name is Mordechai Bargel, he's a shliach in Singapore, got engaged, and he was getting married. So I said, "Mordechai, would you like me to make you, as a friend, would you like me to make you a monogram?" I knew how to draw, but I never made a monogram, but I figured, let me try. Just out of, the friend, wedding gift. So Mordechai said, "Sure." So I made a monogram. It took me a little while to go buy some markers. There was a store. There was a on the corner of Union and Kingston, where the ice cream store is now. They used to sell all kind of pens and pencils. So I went there, I bought what I need, and I made him a beautiful monogram. I said, hey, I'm in 770. My parents can't afford giving me too much. Let me try to do this for a little, buy myself a little food when I don't like the food in 1414. So I basically bought myself, I started this little business that every time somebody got engaged, I approached them and I said, would you like me to make a monogram? You don't have to buy it if you don't like it. But Baruch Hashem, of course, after they saw the monogram, everybody was very happy to take it. And this is what I did. This is how I supported myself throughout being in 717. Then Baruch Hashem, I got married. And after I got married, making monograms wasn't exactly enough, but I had a DSLR camera. So basically, I offered people that I knew. I went around to 770, looked at the Shalom Zachars on the wall, and I see who was making a bris, and I would call them up and says, you're making a bris on Tuesday. Would you like to have a photographer by the bris? I'm going to charge you $30 or $40 for a bris. So it's like saying today I would charge you $70 for a bris, but it was about 24 years ago. So people say, hey, why not? So I would come to the bris and shoot 1 or 2 rolls of film. Basically, after whatever my profit would be $20, whatever it was, I figured if I could do 2-3 bits in a week and a 1 bar mitzvah I would charge $99. I think my first customer was Manya Vovovsky for bar mitzvah in one of the Wise restaurants that doesn't exist on Coney Island. I charged him $99 for a bar mitzvah. And this is what I used to do. A while later, there was a bridal show in a rose castle for frum couples.
So what? Let me just stop you there. So I know you didn't do weddings at all. What's so different between a bris and a bar mitzvah to a wedding that you wouldn't naturally move over to weddings like that?
Well, I believe that even be able to do a bris properly, you have to know what you're doing. But it's very hard to mess up to doing a bris. I mean, you're taking pictures of people mingling. It's more or less candid photography. Anybody can do candid photography. Anybody can buy a camera, put it in automatic, put the flash on TTL, basically automatic, and start taking pictures. Forget about digital, even with film. So let's say you shoot 2 rolls, so you shoot.
Yeah, but by a bar mitzvah, it's not candid. You want to get.
Okay, so we did some imaginary poses and whatever I thought would look right. I felt always had natural talent, but I wasn't going to take somebody's wedding and mess up their wedding photography because I wouldn't know how to do it. So basically, there was a bridal show, and we went to this bridal show because I signed up to have a booth there for monograms, figuring there's going to be thousands of Hassanim and Kalas, and if I get a couple of hundred or 100 of them paying $150, I'm going to make $10,000, $15,000. It's a good deal for Kol Jungerman. So I signed up, and there was actually a well-known photographer doing all the work in Crown Heights. He was one of the main sponsors of the evening. He had this 30-foot-long booth with free photographs, free portraits, a whole spiel there. And I was doing my monograms. After a couple of hours, of course, I couldn't sit down. People were coming by, very impressed with the work, but nobody hired me for the monograms. I got up and I did.
Why do you think that is? What's your...
I have no idea. People liked it, but because if you heard the whole story, you understand the Abers had a much bigger plan. That's why nobody took the monograms. Thank God I don't have to do monograms for a living, because I would charge $150, and I would spend probably 5 to 6, 7 hours just coming up with a concept. Once I had to refine the concept, it wouldn't take more than an hour to draw it. I would draw with pencil and then refine till a very thin marker till it would be perfect. People always thought it was done by computers, but it was always done by hand. So by the show, there was a gentleman. His name was David Tickton. At the time, Aura Studios. He had a half a booth, like a small table, 8 to 6 foot table with about. I was doing my little rounds, walking around, and when I walked past his booth, it struck me that he had like 5, 6 photographs on his table, 11 by 14s and little mats. Very simple. The layout was no big deal. And I was blown away when I saw those photographs. I was like totally captured by what I saw. I couldn't believe what I saw because by me, wedding photography was I myself got married, and to me, it was totally not important. It was boring. It was plain, and it was meaningless. It wasn't art. It was just, you stand here, look here, do this, put your hand under your chin, put your hand on your knee, all the cheesy poses that the wedding photography can offer. And it was just totally, especially where I came from, people didn't pose for pictures. It wasn't something we did. You have a photographer. We had a simcha, but somebody in the house took some pictures. So this whole idea of posing and the fake-looking, artificial-looking photographs that were totally uninspiring to me. In fact, when I get married, I totally didn't care about the photographs. My wife wanted to serve a certain photographer, and I went along with it. So seeing those pictures, I was very, very impressed. So I said, I introduced myself and I told him I like photography. I'm into photography. I'd like to go to the business. He already told me, don't go into the business. It's not a business. Don't go in there. Don't go to that business. He still laughs till today. He laughs at me that he told me that. Every time he tells me, I told you not to go into the business. But anyway, so to make a long story short, a while after we met and said hello and we just mingled a little, I heard that he went bankrupt. I guess being a great photographer is not good enough. You also have to be a good businessman. I tracked him down. He was working for B&H at the time. I tracked him down and I spoke to him. I called him up and he said, "Oh, you're the monogram man." And I said, "Would you like to work for me as a photographer?" Because what happened was I skipped that part. Because I was doing monograms and small photography events, people would ask me, "Do you do weddings? Do you photograph? You're a photographer. Do you do weddings?" And I would always say to the people, "No, I don't do weddings because I don't know how to shoot a wedding." Basically, I figured after a while, people keep on asking me, maybe I do something with it. So basically, I figured maybe I can get people to shoot for me. So I basically asked him if he would be willing to photograph a wedding for me here and there.
So your role was at that point was what? You were just a coordinator.
So basically, I was a hobbyist that liked photography, appreciated good work, and figure I could be a broker. I can hire the guy. He will do the work. I'll take care of the developing and the service end and everything. I have a dining room with a couple of chairs and a table. People come to my house and choose their pictures, etc. I had myself just got the marriage. So I knew how the whole system worked because we myself just had our wedding photographed. I had to make the albums and choose the picture. I figured I was already familiar with the process. So he basically said, "I can work for you twice a month. I have a full-time job. I can take off twice a month." Um, so basically, I walked over to a friend of mine, asked him if he wants to hire me. He said, "Let me ask my wife." And his wife was ecstatic because that was the guy she always wanted for a wedding. She's her whole life, she dreamed about this David being her photographer. So that was my first job. Thank you, Michael Butler. And basically, the rumor was going around that Mendel Meyers is doing photography, wedding photography. And he wasn't enough for me. So he basically said, "If I'm not available, here's a list of guys that used to work for me. You can call these guys. This guy's better. This guy's less better. This is the labs you should use. This is the binder you should." He gave me all the ins and outs of the whole business on a piece of paper. It was before Google, so before the internet. Today, you just Google, you pick where you want to go. But those days, you didn't ship your stuff. You had to go to the lab yourself and hand over the film. God forbid, you would never let it go out of your hand because if you lose the film, you lose the job. And I became quite fast. I became I'm telling local in Kreis. It became, the people, everybody wanted my services because they liked the work. And every time he would do a job for me, I would get back the photographs from the lab, and I was just like ecstatic about the quality. I said, "This is unbelievable," because to me, wedding photography is it was something totally silly. And here you have, even though they're portraits, but everything, it's just absolutely stunning. It was complete artwork. He used to sit there and he used to put Vaseline on his lens, smear Vaseline, took a photograph, actually take actual Vaseline, smear it on a filter on his lens, and like paint with it in a way that the photographs were unbelievable. And based on the demand, I was kept on saying, "Please come and work for me." But to make a long story short, he gave up his job and took the gamble. And we had a meeting. And I said, "Listen, I'll work for you. I'm not asking you for any minimum or maximum amount of jobs. Just give me whatever you can and do the best you can to give me whatever you can. And if I'm not available or whatever, you hire the other guys. But wherever you can give me the work, give me the work." So I started booking work, and he started doing most of the work for me. The problem was not always was he available. For whatever the reason was, I had to hire other people. So I would go with the other people. I would always come and manage the jobs. I would go to and I had all kind of ideas in mind what I wanted in the photo and what I liked. So I would go and tell this Italian guy, whatever. I say, "Okay, I want you to put the bride over here. This is try to explain it one to the sea." But the problem is if you're a creative person, what you see in your mind is not necessarily what the other person sees behind the camera. They don't necessarily have talent or knowledge to understand what you want. So I would give them a whole idea what I wanted, and that would, when I got the proofs back, the photographs back from the lab, the negatives, nothing ever looked close to what I had in mind. So it was a very frustrating experience that started forcing me to basically to not having a choice, starting to have to take the photographs myself. So every time he wasn't available, like I said, I would hire somebody, and eventually I said to myself, I can't do this any longer. So I changed from hiring somebody to take pictures for me. I figured, I told the guy, you're going to come with your equipment and you're going to set everything up. I'm going to pay you the same price as if you would shoot it. The only difference is I'm actually the one shooting the photographs. You're just going to set everything up because I don't have equipment. Because I figured if once you can tell people what you want, you may as well do it yourself. It took about 5 years to come to that conclusion. So once I started doing it myself, basically it opened up a whole new skill for me because now already I'm doing things myself. And that's, and by looking at following people's work that I really looked up to, I quickly developed a niche, a type of style that I would say was quite unique, and I still think it is unique based on what's out there. So that's more or less how things developed into one, and outside Crown Heights, people started finding out, and I started advertising, and one thing led to another, and then we started booking work, and one day we got a very, very big job in the Hilton. I'm not going to mention names, but my father-in-law's partner calls me on my phone, and he says, do you realize whose wedding you're doing today? I said, it's a wedding, a Hilton, big wedding, fancy. But he said, you better do a good job because these are the wealthiest people in New York, basically. And then it was that, and whatever, yeah, all kind of famous people. We started doing all kind of people, and it never meant much to me because I never knew who the people really are. I just did my thing. So that's how basically the business developed into an existing business, and Baruch Hashem, with the years we developed, yeah.
Let me ask you like this then. So the business is growing. Obviously, you have to take on now more and more photographers. So you had to train them in your methodology. How did you?
So believe it or not, we never took on more people. I still basically, typically when we do a wedding, most of the wedding, I would say majority of the weddings where we do, it's going to be either David or myself. Till today, David is still with me. He still works with me. This is 24 years later. Barsha never had an argument. We look out for each other, and either he does the work. I'm talking if you have a wedding with multiple crews, there's always going to be one main photographer does the main work. Right. So either him or myself. Till today, nothing has changed. It's still the same philosophy. I haven't found anybody that I feel comfortable with. And in other words, if I would find somebody that I say is good enough, maybe it would. But I know everybody in the business, and it's just him and myself.
Well, let me ask you like this. I mean, obviously, 24 years of photography, and the world is evolving. So the whole. I mean, obviously, photography is staying the same, but people now, video has become a tremendous aspect of the game that it wasn't 10 years ago. How did you adapt to include that in?
So I'm very happy you asked me that question, because the same problem I had with photography, I had with video. Photography was always very cheesy to me. Wedding photography, so was wedding videos, effects with all kind of narishkeit. And so over the years, I would hire different video people. I had different people on my staff that were more or less working more or less exclusively for me. Trying to train him to see things a little bit different and to think a little bit more like a photographer instead of a person that has a surveillance camera shooting just what's going on and putting effects, dumping effects into the system. We always had. It was actually always a struggle for me to be able to produce video that I was proud of. Up to, I would say, recently, about 5-6 years ago, there was a young man who came to my office, maybe 7 years ago, and he said to me he wants to show me his video work. And he was explaining to me he doesn't do traditional video, works with a DSLR, with the same cameras we take pictures with. And he showed me the work, and I was very, very impressed. And I said to him, wait, if you can do this, I can do this. Would you mind to show me how to do it? He says, no problem. I'll be happy to tell you what you do, what you need to buy. It wasn't much because I had most of the equipment already. So this way, I figured if David goes on the job, takes the pictures, I can do the video if the people only have one photographer. So I started doing the video, but I started to applying the same philosophy, whatever artistic philosophy I had in photography, my vision that I wanted to bring out in the photographs, I decided to bring out in the videos. I wanted something creative. It wasn't, by me, it was never about the poses, what type of poses you do, or what kind of effects you do, or what kind of shtick you do. It was more try to bring out an emotion, a feeling into the photographs and into the video. Try to capture the essence. Try to capture what people are feeling. Try to get emotionally involved with the event. Try to see what people, try to feel the people. And when you feel the people, like a real journalist, if you feel what's going, you feel the pain, you can write about the pain. If you feel the simcha, you can write about the simcha. So the same in photography. If you really feel what people are feeling, then you can bring it out in the photograph. And the same in video. Now I have my first cousin, Matti Himes. He has been working with me for a couple of years. I trained him to shoot video, and he, Baruch Hashem, besides that he has natural talent, he was a very good student, and he's doing all my videos now. And Baruch Hashem, we have a phenomenal product based on this philosophy.
So let me ask you like this now. For all the people who are listening, they've heard your whole story and how it's built up, and obviously you've built a niche. In other words, you've built a brand that's based upon your unique style. In terms of marketing, everything was always organic, or did you ever put some time and effort into promoting your work?
So I always was I was a firm believer in advertising, because not that nobody ever called me. I used to advertise a lot. I spent a lot of money on advertising over the years, and nobody ever said, oh, I saw you in this magazine or that magazine. It was never like that. But the bottom line, I branched out to every single Jewish community from Long Island, Lakewood, Muncie, Baltimore, you name it. We have gone to Switzerland, to France, to England several times to photograph. You name it, we have been there for weddings. And really, the way we marketed ourselves was always with in print advertising, mainly print advertising before the days of internet, before the internet became very popular. My style was always one beautiful, robust, beautiful, stunning photograph with as little wording as possible. I always believe nobody needs to see your phone number in big letters. The most important thing is catch their eye in the ad. Make sure they know who produced this ad. So put your name somewhere, and that doesn't have to be big. And make your phone number and your information as tiny as possible with as little letters as possible. Because I believe if people are not going to call you from that, you don't even have, if you really want to be arrogant, don't even put your phone number there. You ever saw Coca-Cola put an ad in there with a phone number? No, because that's not the goal. But the point is, yes, you could put your phone number, but they may go look back for the magazine to find out where you're advertised, so they can call you. So I always did that a lot. I tried different magazines, a lot of the free magazines that gave out in the Jewish communities.
What was your best marketing?
Well, things have changed in marketing. Things have changed in marketing. Today, my philosophy in marketing has changed a little. There's so many magazines or different things that they give out for free, and you can advertise there. All kind of this magazine in the from market is 1,000,001 magazines they give out for free. I stopped advertising those magazines because my personal philosophy was, if I get those magazines, literally pick them up from the floor, we go through a couple of pages and it goes straight to the garbage, and nobody really looks at these things. And if you start advertising those magazines, there's no end. So today, at the same time, advertising online is also very tricky, because you can advertise on a website that has thousands of hits every day. But the reason people go on a website is not to look at your ad. People usually go on a website to see who's engaged or whatever. So I'm not saying people shouldn't advertise online, but it depends what you're offering. If you're offering a unique product that is a special, for name recognition or branding, it's probably very good. But for me, I personally wasn't sure if it worked for me. My personal philosophy with advertising today is mainly social media. We're very, very strong on Instagram, very strong on Facebook. Almost on a daily or bi-daily basis, we post on Instagram and Facebook. Especially for photographers, it's quite easy because it's all visual. Whether we post a little video clip or we post a photograph with a little or a testimonial, I think that's very powerful, because don't think it's free. Don't think it doesn't cost. It may not cost actual money. Well, Facebook you can pay, but even if you want to get away for free, it's a lot of time and energy and effort. So if you're gonna do it yourself, then you need to put away real time to do it. Unless you're gonna hire somebody, and then it's gonna cost you money. In terms personally, I advertise. You probably have seen me in the Ami magazine. I respect the Ami's magazine a lot as an intellectual Jewish kosher magazine. And I figured if you have a magazine, you can be in one magazine that most people, the type of clients that I'm looking for, are going to buy this magazine. So I don't have to be in a million places. I could be in one, in a magazine that usually hangs around the house. And if people usually don't throw it out, they pass it on to the neighbor, to the friends who can afford the prescription or doesn't have it. So it kind of sticks around and people pay for it. So that has been my philosophy. And Baruch Hashem, it worked for me. I can't speak for other people. Everybody's a different type of business.
So let me ask you like this: in the industry with competition, sharing with the people listening to this, what's your perspective on dealing with competition?
I love this question because it's my favorite question. And I want people to really listen very carefully, because this is I believe is an extremely important lesson. First of all, the most important thing in business is to remember where your business comes. It comes from Kodesh Baruch Hu. It's a gift. The Eibishter gives everybody parnasa. Everybody, there's Baruch Hashem enough, and it's not it's a real thing. There's really enough. Baruch Hashem, there's thousands and thousands of weddings. And as many people are taking pictures today, there's still enough for everybody. So I have a very strong principle about competition. I only will look at whether they're competitors or not. I will only look at other people's work if I can learn something from it. In other words, if somebody tells me this guy is a great photographer, whether he's in the Jewish market or not in the Jewish market, I will look the person up. I will look at it once. If I like what I see, I may put him in my bookmarks and follow that person, because I can get inspired to what I see. Whether it's somebody in California or somebody in South Africa or Jewish, it doesn't matter who the person is. If I can learn something from this person, I will look at the work and I will follow the work. If it's somebody that I don't think is a good photographer, or at least not the style that could be good for somebody, but not what I'm looking for, I will never go back and look at the work, because there's no point for me to look at the work. What is the point? Why am I focusing on something else? You're supposed to focus on your own. My focus has to be on my business, on my clients, on my family, on my Jewish personal life, not on somebody else. I have a salesperson that works for me, Monsi. She's a wonderful salesperson, and once in a while we're competing for a job, and of course, like everybody else, we lose the job. And she will say, "Well, do you know who got the job?" And I said, "I don't care. I don't want to know, and it makes no difference to me. It doesn't belong to me, and there's no point to even dwell on it or even spend energy in it, because it takes you down." Unfortunately, there's people in any industry that the whole day they're busy to find out what the competition is doing, what the competition is charging. In other words, somebody wants some prices, they're welcome to call me. I'll give them my price. There's nothing to hide. What they're doing, how they're doing, why they're doing, and instead of focusing on making their business grow, they're focusing on the negative, and they become bitter, and they start becoming resentful towards their competitors. If somebody else gets a job, good for them. That's what Kodesh Baruch Hu wanted. And besides that, I'll get another job. I'll get somebody else's work. There's enough. There's really enough for everybody. And I think everybody should practice this, because it's extremely. I have a rule. When somebody, when I follow up with somebody, said, "Whatever happened? Did you decided what you?" I say, "Oh yeah, my mechutanim decided, quote unquote, mechutanim decided to go with somebody else." I always make sure to thank him for at least giving me the chance, and say Mazel Tov to. I wish them all the best, because I truly believe there's no whatever belongs to you belongs to you. Whatever doesn't belong to doesn't belong to you. So. And Baruch Hashem, it has worked. It has worked, and you cannot let it get to you. And if you follow the competition in a negative way, it's going to guaranteed drag you down. Only follow people that you can learn, that can inspire you. Never follow people that do the opposite.
That's wonderful. That's a wonderful outlook, and thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you like this: over the years, can you share? Has there ever been a particular challenge that came up, and how you dealt with it?
Oh, every day.
No. So I'm thinking, is there a particular episode? Baruch Hashem, your business for 24 years. Was there ever a particular time when there was a unique, a change in the market? Something came up, and how you how you dealt with that challenge.
So one of the challenges has nothing to do with really photography, but I'll tell you a challenge and I'll give you the answer. Remind me then what the question was. One of the challenges when somebody called me up, I did a very modern wedding. I mean, the wedding was regular kosher wedding in Teaneck, but the couple were very modern. They were probably knew each other for a few years and they were engaged for probably 7, 8 months. And they called me up before the wedding and they want to know my opinion if they should be taking pictures together before the chuppah, they should see each other taking pictures before the chuppah, or only see each other after the chuppah. Now, Ba'az and Chabad, or Hasidim, or regular yeshivish, whatever, the Hamish crowd, we don't see each other the week before the chazanah. And then we see each other the first time by the Badeket. So some a little bit more modern people will, or the Sfardim, even the very frum Sfardim, they see each other the day, even if they don't see each other a week before, but as Sfardim, they don't have the whole thing from the week before, but they will see each other the day of the wedding to save time. They claim it's Tzricha Tzibur, hold up the crowd, so the Rabbanim allow them to see each other in a modest way and take pictures together. So here, if there's extremely modern couple, and they're asking me being the Lubavitcher, and I want to know what I think if they should say. Now I have to become the Rav to come up with a smart answer. So I could tell him, listen, ask your Rabbi, don't get me involved. But I felt it was an opportunity, and I was very happy with the answer I gave him. I felt it was mamish min hashamayim, the answer. I said, well, you guys are, you're in Teaneck, and most probably, first you should ask your rabbi, but I know what your rabbi is going to say. Your rabbi is going to say you should see each other before the wedding, take the pictures together, because it's going to hold up the crowd if you have to do it after the chuppah. And I said, since that's going to be the answer, let me tell you what my opinion is. Since he's the rabbi, and the rabbi, he's the one that's going to pass for you should follow what he says. But my advice would be, if you are going to see each other, regardless how long you know each other and how long you have been together, the day of your wedding is the day of Yom Kippur. It's a very special day. People daven, they do tshuva. So that day, whatever you do, you should be extremely, extremely careful not to get too close to each other when you take those pictures, that you shouldn't do anything that's not appropriate according to the, dry halacha, regardless what happened till now, but this is the day of your wedding, you should really do everything the most kosher way that day. And they were so thrilled in my answer. They were like blown away. And I couldn't believe I said it myself. And they end up that day, they were very like what we call out there showman gear. They did everything appropriate. They saw each other, but they took the picture before, but they didn't do anything inappropriate during the picture time before the chuppah. What was the question again?
So challenge and how you dealt with it.
So we do every day with different challenges. My philosophy with any type of challenge is always try to be positive, try to look out for the good. In general, every customer is different. When you deal with customers, everybody has a different understanding how things work.
Right. So I wanted to ask you like this. Then obviously your business is very customer service heavy. What particular tips would you have to share with anyone that's involved in a business that's so close customer service centric? What do you do to keep your customers happy? What's a tip?
Basically, the first thing, if people call up, first of all, under promise and over deliver. If a product is told, if something is going to take me a month to produce, I'm going to tell them 6 to 8 weeks. So I know I have a buffer zone for at least 6 weeks, and I always try to really under promise and over deliver. It's a simple technique that, even though it hurts sometimes for the person, wow, so long, but rather you just tell them the way you think. Tell them the worst in your mind, what's going to be the worst scenario, what's going to happen. Whether you have to ship something to somebody or tell somebody how long it's going to take to do. Always under promise and over deliver. Because the bottom line is, if they're a little upset, but people will understand this is probably the way it works. And at the end of the day, if you you over deliver, people are going to be very, very happy. People are going to be impressed. In terms of when people call up and they have a complaint, which is quite common in every type of business you're in, first thing you have to do is listen to everything they say. Just let them talk. Even if they talk for 20 minutes, do not interrupt. Let them air out. Because a lot of people's complaints, they're not real complaints. It's something that's bothering them, and they need to let it out. And people are not used to being listened to when they complain. Nobody has patience to listen to people, whether it's a spouse or a child. Nobody likes to listen to complaints. So when people actually have a complaint, and it's irrelevant if it's a legitimate complaint or not legitimate, to them it's legitimate. Listen to everything they say. And when they totally finished, I actually heard the sample about chinuch, but it applies to every rule and every relationship. When they finished with their complaint, acknowledge what they said. In other words, repeat what they said. So you don't like what we did about this, this, and this. Correct? And they say correct. Then you're going to explain them either why you did it, why there was no other way to do it, or why you were wrong for doing it. I have no problem telling somebody I was wrong. People love hearing that. People love when you just tell them, if most of the time you tell somebody I could have done it, you're probably right, I could have done it a different way. People are going to be very happy when you tell them that. And then there's those people, they're not going to be happy whatever you tell them, of course, but we're not talking about those people. Majority of the people are honest, decent, good people, but not everybody has an eye for photography. Not everybody understands what they're looking at. I find one thing, but in general, with any type of product you deliver, if you're going to deliver a good product, in the beginning, people may have buyer's remorse. They may say, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have done it. It's a natural thing to have buyer's remorse. But the longer they have the product, the happier they're going to be. If you sell somebody a bad product, they may be very excited in the beginning because they don't know what they're really looking at. At the end of the day, they're not going to be happy with the product. It's just like you can listen to a new singer that comes out with a new CD, and you listen to the first thing, and you say, what in heaven's name was this guy singing? What kind of music? What kind of song is this? And before you know, you walk down the street and you're singing the songs to yourself. Why? Because if it's a good product, it internalizes. And if it's not a good product, it will never stick. So,
Right. That's beautiful. That's beautiful here. In the few minutes that we have left over here. Number one, is there a story of Hashgacha Pratis that comes to your mind in all the years of business? Some sort of incident that happened that you saw the hand of the Eibishter.
Okay, so the hand of the Eibishter we see every minute of the day almost. There's a lot of Hashgacha Pratis. I'm a very I could tell you a little story, but before that, to remind me of the story that I have to tell you that had not much to do with the business, but had to do with photography. I'm a very strong believer in tzedakah. I believe that in business, I truly believe in very, very strongly believe in what the Mishnah says that. I can't quote the words here, but you can be Mekayim the Torah me'oini or me'osher. That if a person Mekayim the Torah me'oini, at the end you're going to be Mekayim me'osher, or the opposite. In other words, if you are very tight with your time, and you're very tight in business, and even though you're tight, you're going to make time for Kadosh Baruch Hu, whether it's davening a minyan, or whether it's learning, whatever you have to do. And we at Lubavitch Chassidim have the basics. We talk about the basics are davening 3 times in a minyan, that's halacha. And then we have the other basic of the challah, pachas, chita, sarama. I'm not talking about learning Chassidus and learning Nikla, but I'm talking about the basics of our own Chassidus. So the first thing we have to do, I'm a very strong believer that I don't do any business. I will check my email, but I'm not responding. I'm not going into any returning phone calls till I'm done davening and my shurim after davening. Easier said than done. I have people in the office that do it for me, but still, I don't get involved with the business. My daily schedule usually starts around between 12 and 1 o'clock. I refuse to get involved with the business. And it's funny because it took me years to master that. But the longer I do that, the better I'm getting at this, the easier the business gets. So Hasidus explains all this, but I see it in real life that if you are going to dedicate your hours to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you not only you get rewarded, but your business won't bother you. Nothing will be what something that could take. The Rebbe gives an example about working on Shabbos. The famous example the Rebbe gives that people that work on Shabbos, the busiest day of the week. The Rebbe says, could be you'll be making more money, but you're going to have more chas v'shalom expenses for doctors or all kind of other plumbers. I don't know what kind of expenses you're going to have. I see it b'muchash that if you are going to give yourself over to Kodesh Baruch Hu, but whatever Kodesh Baruch Hu, we're not talking about doing anything unnatural, doing the right, just do what you got to do. Kodesh Baruch Hu will take care of you. You have less problems in the business. Things will go much smoother. You will have less incidents, and he said before challenges. That's why Baruch Hashem, don't really have any major challenges because I really try to do what's right. That's in terms of time. In terms of money, personally, I believe the Rebbe Shita was, and I'm not trying to advertise over here what I'm doing, but I believe that if I can help inspire, I think it's important. The Rebbe always encouraged people to give chaimish. I have my story that I always shared with many people. When I was a bacher, I have a good friend of mine was a mashgiach kashrus in Germany. We were in Holland, and he asked me if I can come for a week with him to Germany. We're going to stay in a nice hotel, and we're going to go to see the milking of the cows in the morning and afternoon. This is about 26 years ago, and I'm going to get $500 or $600 cash. Now you're talking 26 years of a bacher to spend a week in a hotel, go sightseeing the whole day. Just make sure in the morning you get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. You're being picked up by a drive on a couple of farms, and late afternoon in the summer, about 7, 8 o'clock again. You get the whole day. You can go spazier. We go to East Germany, wherever you want to go. We went everywhere as long as we were back on time. And I remember like I said before, I didn't have money, so that week we came back on Friday from Germany with $500 or $600 or $600 cash in my hand. And I said, what am I going to do with this money? I never had money my whole life. I never had a penny to my name, And I said, at least the Rebbe said, I was 19 years old, and the Rebbe said you have to give 20% tzedakah. Let me start with 20, let me put right away 20% away for tzedakah. If I don't know what to do with the money, let me at least do what the Rebbe says. I got a phone call from him an hour later. He tells me, Mendel, there was the factory in Israel had a fire and they need another production next week. Can you go again next week? So I learned my lesson very early on. So I keep a very, very detailed cheshbon. I think this is important for everybody. Books can get very confusing, but there's a lot of different parts of the books. This expenses, tzedakah, and people, what you take out the personal, what you take out a loan. Keep a very detailed register for yourself what you're actually taking out to yourself in the business. I believe there's people out there who are making less than they think, and people are making more than they think. That's why you have to keep a very, very good track of what you actually make, what you're actually putting in your own pocket, what you're drawing a salary or whatever. And I keep another register of what I'm giving to tzedakah. And I make sure to keep track, to balance it out, that there's always going to be around 20% is giving to tzedakah. I never, since before I started in business, even when I was struggling and I was doing stuff, I was just doing, monograms or small prison, everything was always 20%. And again, I'm not saying this because, I'm not saying this to brag or anything. I don't think it's bragging. I think this is something the Rebbe said we should do. And you will see that if you're going to do it yourself, you're going to see Hatzlacha immediately.
That's beautiful. And here's our final question for the night. You're looking now at a young 22-year-old younger man. He's going into business. Mendel, what's the one piece of advice you want to give me as I launch my initiative over here? What's your, looking back at all the 24 years that you've had in business, what's that one item that you want to tell somebody?
First of all, ask advice. Always ask advice. Don't go by your emotional impulse of what you think is going to, whatever you do. Even if you think it's a good idea, make sure you ask advice from somebody who has experience in business. Number one, make sure that you dedicate yourself to if you want a Kodesh Baruch Hu to help you, make sure you help him. Do what you're, like I just said before, you do yours. I know, I'm sorry, I'm not necessarily answering the question the way you want me to answer it, but I really think that's the answer. I think you have to make a kli. The kli is, look, whatever you want to do, whatever your heart...
Just to pause you, that's why we call ourselves the K-Factor podcast.
Right.
To make the Keli.
Follow your heart. I believe it's extremely, extremely important. I would think rule number one, follow your heart. Rule number one, make a kli. Follow your heart. Whatever your heart wants to. If you feel this is what I want to do, don't second guess yourself. In anything you want to do, whatever it is you want to do, there's ways to make up on us. So there's people who became wealthy selling paper clips, and there's people who we're trying real estate and don't make it. Meaning it doesn't. You just have to follow your heart. I believe making keli, and make sure to always, like the Rebbe always said it to people, as Yedidim Mevinim. I can tell you that the different parts in my life in Parnassah were, anytime I made an impulsive decision, and I didn't ask advice, and not as in photography, but in other deals with different things, I lost everything. I lost everything, and I look back, and I'm not even upset at myself. I just took it as a lesson. All I had to do when I made those decisions, why didn't I ask one or two people if this is the right decision? Why did I just went by my impulse? And I just promise you one little Ashgacha Prata story, so I have to tell you that story. I actually once posted a story in COL. One of my customs hopefully will continue to be, is that I used to treat the people that work with me on a trip. So over the years, I call him my partner because we're together for 25 years. After a busy season in June, when the 3 weeks started, we would go on a road trip to the national parks. We went to Alaska, different places we would go. So one year we decided to go to Alaska, Baruch Hashem, at Miles and we went to Alaska. I treated for a trip to Alaska for Sunday through Friday, basically sightseeing, taking pictures of nature. Beautiful Denali National Park, the most amazing scenery. And we decided we're going to drive from Anchorage to Homer, which is a long, boring drive, actually, just almost like driving upstate New York. And along the road, we see a store that sells wooden tchotchkes, woodwork. So he decided, Mendel, let's stop up. Let's see what they have, the souvenirs. Let's see. No, I'm sorry. There was along the road, there was a farm and a rainbow coming out of the farm. And along the rainbow, there was also a store that's selling tchotchkes. So there's rainbows coming out of his two horses standing on a farm with a rainbow coming out of it. A nice cliche picture. So I said, David, let's stop. I want to take the picture. He didn't want to take the picture because he said, what's the point of taking a picture? It's a postcard. It's nothing. You can't be machadish. It's too beautiful to capture. A good photograph, you have to be able to machadish something. This is just something beautiful, So I said, okay, I'm going to take the picture. So I'm climbing over the gate and see the little blonde kids running around. I don't know why. I thought to myself, imagine these kids are Jewish. And I went to the farm, climbed over the gate, and took a couple of photographs of the horses with the background, on the farm with the rainbow, a nice cliche picture. And then I was looking for him. I walked into the store, and I find him. He's talking to the lady in the store behind the counter, and she's talking about how much she loves the Jews and the Jews, and she loves the Jews and I love the Jews. And I'm thinking to myself, here's another anti-Semite, you know what I mean? Till the lady tells us that her grandmother was Jewish. And to make a long story, this lady is Jewish. Her mother's Jewish, and she's married to a Danish guy. And they have this workboard, and half the year they live in Washington state of Washington. The other half of the year they live in the summer they live in Alaska. Basically, by the time we finished the conversation, she was literally in tears. She was so emotional about the fact that, and David started teasing me, what kind of Lubavitcher are you coming here without mezuzahs, whatever. So she walked us to the car, and she's like almost in tears. And like I took her information, and since then I keep in touch with her, and I send her matzahs for Pesach. So it's just one of the stories from a rainbow. We met a Jew, but it's always stories that happen every day.
So after all this long conversation, all the young people that are listening to this, if any of them want to get in touch with you to ask you some of your wisdom, how would they reach out to you?
They're more than welcome to get in touch with me. They can always call my office. They can also email me personally. It's Mendel@mendelmeyers.com. If you want to know how to spell it, just Google it. Yeah, anytime. I'm always free. I'm pretty quick at answering emails. And I'd be more than happy to assist or help. I don't know if there's much I can do for them, but anything I can do, I'll be happy to help.
That's beautiful. This has been a wonderful and beautiful conversation. Thank you very much. And for everyone that's listening, have a wonderful week. Mechayel, Elchayel. We'll see you again.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for listening to the CHYE in partnership with COL Live K-Factor podcast with your host, Rabbi Yehoshua Werdy. We look forward to bringing you more amazing entrepreneurs to share their stories. See you next week.